Hey everybody, Meredith Clark here from Region 10. Welcome to this video in our World Language Program Success Series. The title is How Do I Read and Understand a Thematic Unit? My contact information is here. Feel free to contact me if you have any questions about the learning in this video. And let's go ahead and dive in and look at some questions that will shape our learning for today. Okay, first question is what information is in the thematic unit document? And how does this information shape how I teach? Okay, so if you're new to teaching for thematic units, we need to know how to read that thematic unit and really understand the parts of the unit and their purpose. Okay, so let's take a look here. The first really important piece of information on your thematic unit document is the desired results for learning. Now, this should sound familiar because it's the first stage in backward design. This example you see on the screen is for level 1, and the desired results are clearly labeled for novice mid to novice high proficiency level. You'll also see an AP theme and an essential question. Now, you might ask yourself, well, I'm teaching level 1. Why do we need AP themes? Right? They don't have to do that for 3 more years. Okay? Here's why. Your thematic units are aligned to AP themes because they connect to that which lies beyond just memorizing words and grammar, right? They connect us to questions that drive inquiry and curiosity about what it means to be a human. And we're going to start asking students these essential questions and working their brains in this way in level 1 all the way up through level 3 based on the AP theme to prepare kids for AP level 4. Okay, so that is the purpose here. Now, as a teacher, you might be thinking, well, how does this information shape how I teach? If I'm a level 2 teacher, why is this important for me? Okay, I think that as a level 1, a 2, and a 3 teacher, if you know that what your students are learning to do is not just to pass the course, but it's really to prepare them to be successful in AP, to help out your school accountability ratings, and to get those kids prepared linguistically for what lies after high school, you're going to be a little bit more bought into the curriculum, and you're going to see that the students are more bought into it also, because it's inherently much more engaging to be talking about, for example, the essential question, what makes you unique? That's much more engaging than just saying, okay, kids, this is our first unit, and you're going to learn about the verb ser and adjectives to describe yourself, right? Which one would you rather do? Talk about what makes you unique or learn verbs and personality adjectives? Well, I know which one I would pick, right? Okay, so that's why it's important to understand this as a teacher. Second piece of information that is important for you to read and understand on your unit document is the learning goals section. And this is how we hope kids are smarter after we teach this unit. They should be able to do something new, and that is to communicate in the 3 modes of communication. And every single one of these learning goals is aligned to the TEKS. Okay? So when your administrator comes in and says, what are the kids learning? Or your parent says, hey, what is my kid going to learn? Or a student says that, you know exactly what they're going to learn how to do. Okay? The third piece of information that you'll see that's very important on your unit document is the evidence and assessment. Now that should ring a bell because that's the second stage of backward design. Okay? How do we know if kids can do the learning goals? Well, we got to ask them to show us that they can do the learning goals. And that's exactly what the evidence and assessment does. These are your summative unit performance assessments. They are all linked, so you notice that these titles are in blue. All of your assessment prompts are already written for you. So you're not going to give a multiple choice test. You don't have to create, anything new, like, oh, what student expectations am I going to test? Nope, that's already done for you. Okay, so no more multiple choice tests. Okay, because what we're really testing for is to see if the kids can do the TEKS. Okay, how does this information shape how you teach? Well, you're not teaching kids grammar and vocabulary anymore. You're teaching them to do the skills in the performance task. Okay, and you're like, okay, that sounds like a lot of flowery edu-speak. Dr. Clark, can you show us? Okay, and here's an example. If I just teach for grammar and vocabulary, the kids can memorize that, soak it up, spit it out on a multiple choice test, no problem. But if I only teach vocabulary and grammar and maybe some cultural information, I'm staying within the knowledge area. And I need to go beyond language knowledge to language communication. The kids need to ask and answer questions. They need to infer the meaning of unknown words. They need to describe in writing. Okay, so if I just teach content like travel vocabulary and conditional verbs, then I'm not going to get to full communication. Okay, so that's our goal. The fourth piece of information that's very important on your unit document is a page that gives you some tips and some things to avoid when teaching in each mode of communication, and some learning pieces for you. Okay, let's say that, for example, the interpersonal end of unit summative assessment is for students to ask and answer questions about who they are and what they like to do using memorized words and phrases. Well, if that's the case, then I got to think, what does that conversation sound like? And then how do I teach kids to have a conversation? Because you're not just teaching them vocabulary and grammar, you're teaching them to have a conversation. Okay, so there are lots of tips there and resources also to help you if you need to learn more about how to teach that way. All right, so make sure you use those resources that are linked there. All right, now how does this shape how you teach? Okay, I'm going to throw out something really controversial here, but I think it's a good idea, so I'm going to say it. You're not just a language teacher anymore with these thematic units. You create an environment for second language acquisition to occur, and you teach communication and literacy skills. Okay, let that sink in for just a moment. If you look back at your unit, your learning goals, there's not a single learning goal on there that mentions vocabulary words or grammar structures. The goals are always for kids to communicate and in the interpretive mode to read or listen to, or for American Sign Language to have receptive expression, right? And make meaning or understanding of that. Okay, so, right, we see here that we are not just teaching language parts, we're teaching kids to communicate, and we are teaching those literacy skills. All right, now, another piece of information in your unit document is tips for how to teach intercultural communication. So, for example, if we are exchanging personal information and someone asks for your digits, right? Maybe your phone number so they can send you a text message, then you would want to teach the kids the way people say phone numbers in the target language. Okay, for example, in some countries, they group the numbers differently. Okay, so we want to teach them the way that people communicate in the target language. Okay, differentiation and technology help or reminders are also available on this page of the unit. And just want to do a quick revisit here on, okay, we know all of the pieces of the unit now. We understand their purpose. We understand, okay, right, like I got a summative assessment task here. I've got learning targets. I've got the desired results, which is the proficiency level. Okay, I got it. All right. But how can this go wrong? Because you can understand, they're all aligned to the AP themes. I got it. This is great. But understanding the unit and teaching the unit, okay, there can be a gap there. All right, so let's look at this gap really quickly. If we look at this summative unit performance task, and I teach it like a traditional unit, meaning that on my calendar I plan for the vocabulary and the grammar structure, I am going to teach knowledge but not communication, right? Okay, so if I teach my unit like this, kids are not going to be successful on that summative task, which may lead you to the conclusion that this curriculum doesn't work. Well, it's not that the curriculum doesn't work, it's just that we didn't address the gap between teacher knowledge and teacher skill. Okay, so instead, you should plan your thematic unit like this. Okay, instead of the topic or the vocabulary or grammar, you're going to put the skills the students are doing on your planning calendar. So if I put for Tuesday, kids are going to work on interpersonal mode, asking and responding to questions. As I repeat that skill, I'm teaching them chunks of the conversation, how to ask, how to respond, how to react. Okay, and if we do that little by little, kids will be able to do the performance task at the end of the unit. Okay, so what did we learn today? Okay, we talked about the information on the thematic unit document and how it should shape how you teach. Okay, what are the success criteria? Everybody needs to know the TEKS. Okay, number one. Okay, and also like with these units, I've got to be able to understand the components and their purpose. And I need to be able to pace the learning on the calendar by TEKS or student output, which are the SEs. Okay, as always, Region 10 is here to help. We have available for you all lots of resources on our website. Okay, we have a statewide think tank. We have asynchronous online courses. You can request on-site workshops. We've got lots of support for you all. And I want to thank you for watching this video today. I'm sending you a lot of love, world language love. And I know that if we work together, we can move the needle on student language proficiency. Okay? Y'all take care, and I'll see you next time.